This is Laura Dunn, who's presenting tonight on vermicomposting. And this series is a collaboration between Bedford Community Gardens and the McCarthy Library. We started this a 3 years ago, maybe now, where we have a monthly presenter, you know, on vermicomposting or permaculture or growing vegetables. So we welcome you and we hope you enjoy this presentation.
Thanks, Emily. So I actually just learned this by doing this paper, because I always call it vermiculture. And I use that term to just talk about worm farming. But vermiculture, I think it's the first thing I said. Vermiculture is the process of breeding worms. So that would be like more of a large scale situation. So vermicomposting is what I'm doing. Though I am also breeding worms, but I'm not doing it on a large scale or for any kind of sale or anything like that. They just breed on their own and they do their own thing, you know. So vermicomposting is what I'm doing, which is worm farming. And I've had my worms since 2007, which I can't even believe. It's a really long time. And I only know that because I took a picture of them the day that my friend gave them to me. And she gave them to me, I think she had bought too much. She bought like a pound and they sent her 2 pounds or something. And so I got literally a bag of worms in the mail. Or she got them in the mail and she brought them to my house. And this was Pixie. I used to work for Pixie, her given name, Pixie, and she was into all kinds of stuff, very cool lady. And she's like, "You want to try this worm stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So she brought them over, and I made my own worm bin. And anybody can make you don't have to have one of these fancy systems. In fact, this is kind of an old school system now. But I put a link on here to how you can make your own vermiculture or worm bin, just using like a Rubbermaid tote. You drill air holes in it, you drill drain holes in it, and they can live in there forever. And so I had that probably for a couple of years, and then for a birthday or Christmas present, my husband got me this cool system, which is called a worm factory. And it's got this really handy dandy little cheat sheet right on the top, so you don't forget what things you need to know about the worms. And the type of worm I use is called a red wiggler, and they also have other names, branding worm, tiger worm, red worm, and they are not native to Maine, so they can't live in our climate. So sometimes they might end up out in your garden because there's a few left in your compost, and they'll die in the winter. But I try my best to not have that happen. When I harvest my compost, I pick out and so there's other types of composting worms. In fact, there's 9,000 species of worms in the world, at least, and there's only 7 known composting worms. Red wigglers being one, African night crawlers are another popular one, and European night crawlers are popular. And I've never tried them, so I can't speak to how they work, but I've been recently, actually, I joined some Facebook groups on worming. It just occurred to me, like, wow, I can join a Facebook group on worming and learn some more stuff, you know? So even after all this time of having them how many years, I've learned more stuff, like just this year, so that's really cool. And it kind of got me interested in maybe like looking into these other worms, but not that interested because I haven't bought them yet. So
could they cohabitate? Like the two
they can actually. Yeah, they work at different rates and stuff. So I think this would probably be too small for that. But my worms self-maintain. I don't have to do anything to them at all except for feed them and harvest the compost. They live in here, and they maybe if their conditions aren't optimal, they might crawl out at night. Occasionally, I find 1 or 2 in the kitchen floor. These live in my kitchen, and they've lived in my kitchen
That's
since
why
2000.
they don't die.
They don't die because they stay in the house. Okay. And they lived in my kitchen since 2007.
And they don't smell.
And they do not smell. I've got compost here and I'll give it to you for the smell test, sniff test. It smells like nothing actually. If you stick your nose in here, it'll smell like a deep earth. I'll pass this around, yeah. So this is recently harvested vermicompost, beautiful black gold. You stick your nose in there and it smells just divine. So, and that's another thing is harvesting for me is kind of like a meditation. I enjoy it. I'll spend a whole afternoon harvesting my compost and picking it. Did you eat some? Picking out worms. You know, I don't want any worm to be harmed. Every worm is sacred. They're my children. So let's see what else. So generally, to start your own home worm farm, you need about 1,000 worms, which is about a pound. And you can buy them by the pound. You can buy a half a pound. And they reproduce just constantly. And their reproduction cycle is really interesting. They're hermaphroditic. So, which means that they are both, every single worm is both male and female. And the way that they reproduce is they lay together head to toe, head, toe, toe. And they align themselves, and there's that, you know, the band that you see around the worm is called the clitellum. They each have that, and then they have male reproductive organs and female reproductive organs, both of them, and they lay together. They actually kind of twirl together. You can sometimes you'll see them, you know. Coitus interruptus. And then they exchange the sperm and the eggs, and then they separate. And then after they separate, that clitium, I think that's how you say it, it comes off and becomes the worm cocoon. And the cocoon has little baby worms in it. And I brought a cocoon for you to look at. And a little microscope, or what do you call it? Magnifying glass. And this is an empty, dry cocoon, so there's no worms in that. But you'll see them when you're harvesting your compost, you'll see the cocoons. You can open it, yeah. And it's so tiny.
How many worms are in that?
Yeah, each cocoon has, I wrote it down. It's not that many. It's like a seed. Yeah, it's like a little seed. I thought this was only 2 pages. Sorry, it went on to 2. Yeah, I'm going to put the top back on just so we don't lose it.
And make them fast. This talks about trying to draw them up to the food supply they're harvesting. If you cut off their food supply, how long are you going to die?
Good question. I guess I don't have that on here. How many babies are there? Well, anyway, it's not that many. It's like 7 to 11. They're teeny, yeah. And maybe there's only like 3 in there. So there's an average of 3 per egg case. Wow. And then so they wiggle right out, and then they start immediately eating.
How long do they gestate for?
It's a while. It's like 24 days or something like that. Yeah, I have it in here. I thought I had it in here.
If you keep talking.
Yeah. 30 to 75 days. And the reason they say it that way is that they won't hatch if the conditions aren't optimal, which is interesting. So if it's not,
so we'll preserve them and
they'll stay. Yeah. So if it's not moist enough, if it's too cold, or you know what I mean. So
I go to Paris for a week. They will survive without it.
They will survive a long time without it. Yeah. Because what they'll do also is they'll continue to work the material. So in other words, I'll show you what in a minute. In a minute, we can look inside here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Another very important thing for a worm, I mean, essential is bedding. So worm bedding. So every worm farm should have bedding, and a very typical bedding is shredded newspaper, and it should be this. It should feel like this. It's moist as water. You just shred it up, tear it up, and put some water in there and squeeze the water out so it's not too sopping wet. Because if they're too wet, it can introduce different pests and things. So you want to have a certain moisture, 80% or something, something like that. You kind of get to know what the moisture level is. And if it gets too moist, you can add more dry paper, or you can add shredded cardboard. You can use paper from a paper shredder, junk mail, they say.
So each time you add it to that, you added that same way.
You're gonna do, yeah. So in other words, I brought a new tray, so we can put that in and I can start a new tray. So this is a stacking system. It's called a worm factory, and they have a newer version of this, which I don't think it's that much different, but so each of these is a different section, and the way that they say it is these worms travel up. They're top feeders, so they're not like an earthworm. They don't burrow, so they feed on the top.
For the food. Yeah.
They come up for the food, so you're going to feed on the topmost. This tray I feed in. I've got another thing going on here, which I'll explain. However, in my experience, from 2007 to today, there will be worms in every bin. Just the way it is. There's going to be the most worms where the most food is, but there's worms in every bin.
Do you just put the food on the top, or do you lift up, put food on each layer?
No, just in the one, and you want to so if I want to put this tray in, which I will do tonight, I brought some dry newspaper so I can show you how to tear it.
It's really prepared. You can tell you were a teacher.
Well, I actually will add more than this.
So are you adding that because you want to get more worms, or you want to get more compost?
Well, what the deal is that they fill these up and they can only get so full.
Oh, right.
They make this compost. They get, and then you can add another layer.
So, but if you emptied it out, you could just keep it.
Keep it. Yeah, but generally you don't harvest your compost. Maybe a couple times a year.
Oh, right.
How
much do you get out?
times a year? I get quite a bit. I get probably a 5-gallon bucket every time I harvest, maybe around there. So I would actually want to put more and have it be pretty full. And there's a woman, I referenced her. She's out of the University of North Carolina, I think. Her name is Rhonda Sherman. She's like worm central, she's very worm focused, and she's teaches it and has all kinds of information. And so she's a good website to check out. And she has a really nice way of saying that, like think of it like it's the comfort. It's like when you get in your bed and you're comfortable. This is like comfortable to the worms. It's got their right conditions. It's got that. It's got air pockets. They can move around. It's got the right moisture content. They actually will consume it as well. So all of this paper will become compost. And with worms, basically they can eat anything that was once alive. So this was once a tree. They can eat it. So, but in a home worm composting system, there's a few things you don't want to feed them. You don't want to feed them citrus because it creates too acidic of an environment. And they also don't care for it. They also don't care for like things in the onion family. They'll eat it, but they don't care for it. So I put very minimal onion products in there. And then also no meat or dairy. And that's because they can't consume it fast enough for it to not create an odor or bring pests in. And
what about banana peels?
Yeah, we'll eat the whole thing. And there are pests that will get in your bin. Some are beneficial in terms of they're also composters. So like springtails. I don't know if you've ever seen a springtail. It's a little white, teensy white thing, and they actually jump. It's like a little, and I have them in this bin, but they're not too bad. And then
So how do
you add more browns. So shredded paper or shredded cardboard or brown paper bags, and that creates a drier environment. They don't care for the drier environment. Yeah, and then sometimes if you say add too much, you shouldn't overfeed. You should never overfeed your worms. So that's why I say you have to feed the worm. So you know, you don't want to give them more than they can consume. And so you might find that you've given them too much banana peel, and all of a sudden you're seeing fruit flies.
Yeah.
So
So there's a clear indication that, you know.
yeah,
If
you gotta just, you know when to feed and when not to feed. And they say you feed them, and then you don't feed them again until what you fed them is gone. So what I do is I've been feeding them in one corner. When that food is gone, I feed them in another corner. When that food is gone, another in the center, and like that. And you should put your food in. I brought some food. This is just a little sample. It's just veggies. They like things chopped up small. You don't have to go over the board to chop them up, but you can. If you love your worms, you can grind them up nice and small. They're even easier for them to eat. And then you want to actually bury the food, and that helps keep the pests away. So you're gonna some people want to wear a glove to go into the worm bin, or some people want to go in with like a garden trowel. Not a trowel, one of those things, the cloth, and lift up, feed, and then basically forget it. Feed them and forget it, unless it's causing a problem like with some fruit flies or things like that. You can just forget it and then just feed them every few days. And then so they say a worm can eat 1/4 of its body weight a day. So what? I think that's, yeah.
And they don't get fat.
They do not get fat. No. Unless they get the bakery. Yeah. So I don't know what it is, but I love my worms. So I'm going to show you if you want. This new thing that I learned is, so a lot of people that keep worms, they don't have this system. They keep it in a bathtub, not not one that they're going to be eating themselves, or a bin, like a tote. And then on top they would keep like a blanket, and then they would put like plastic over the blanket. And the blanket actually, the worms like to go through the fibers because it helps them to pull off the egg casing. And then I don't know who it was, but somebody said moss. And so I went and collected moss. And so now this is my nursery tray. The top tray is my nursery tray. And
it's good.
So this is moss. And so they love to crawl through in and out the moss. And they, and so you can see there's all these babies up here. These teeny little babies. And there's the sprinters. So they are also composters. They're not an issue. If they were really like 100,000 of them, they might find it's an issue. So this is my nursery, and you can put other things. Like this is a piece of from the halal store.
Oh, right.
And they'll like to crawl right through. That's a piece of my orchid. They like to crawl right through the fibers of that to pull up their egg casings.
And I just saw them.
Go down because the light.
Yeah.
So
Just like when you're digging worms.
yeah. So this is something new that I started.
So that's how they go.
This is how they go. Oh yeah.
They're happy.
They are. And this is a compostable spoon. I put it in there to see if it actually does. Okay, so the next layer down is where I've been feeding.
I'll check that out.
So this is the feeding bin.
Yeah.
And
it's like a spaghetti strainer.
Yes. So because it's light, they're gonna go back up in. So they won't hang out there long. So I just fed them, I think up here. So you can see there's some food there. And a lot of times when you feed them, you will see a huge mass of worms. So you can see the compost happening.
Okay.
This is a mango pit, and pits will sprout in here.
So then the paper so the ink of the paper is in the bottom.
It's soy,
yeah.
soy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they say anyways.
Pretty sure.
And then down lower,
Look at that, you guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it.
And they're just hanging around.
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
so
Now,
this
do
is,
you name them?
yeah.
Which is your favorite?
That would be something I might do, yeah. So it is
Oh my
lovely.
gosh, it's just gorgeous.
No smell.
Can you put coffee grounds in there?
Yes, yeah. It's actually a good thing. So these are all avocado pits and they always sprout. And I've got a like 7-foot tall avocado tree in my house that came out of here. So I always put and they go right inside there.
The worms go inside?
Oh yeah. I could crack that open and it'll be. And then this will be even more finished compost down
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a nice ball of worms.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a small ball.
They ever get big like nightcrawlers?
No, this is their size. This is about,
That's about their size.
yeah.
So they live out and die in there.
They live and die in there. They're self-sustaining. So
The cannibals.
they will, yeah, they will eat each other. Yeah.
How long an individual lives.
4 to 5 years in optimal.
Wow.
Optimal.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I've never had to, I have given worms away, but I've never had to do anything as far as,
Because they'll just keep,
They just-
even if you give some away, they'll keep multiplying.
they keep multiplying and yeah, so, so this is my most exciting newest thing here.
No, I thought these were
Did you get the moss from the woods?
Yeah, this is just moss from out the way.
Okay.
And
thick layer.
which you would think might introduce some kind of other creatures, but I didn't get any
But
problems.
do they have to have light? Is the moss?
That moss has been in there since there was snow on the ground.
Wow.
With the cover.
The cover. Yeah.
So what about way at the bottom?
So that's down here, if you can see right here, there's a spigot.
Yeah.
And this is the other new thing that I learned this year is that should have make something about it. Put that on. It's so cool. So this spigot in this section, see there's holes in here, and the any liquid that they create, worm pee, will go down, and then catch in here, and then there's a spigot, and you collect that.
Worm
And I've always called it worm tea. Well, it's not.
Oh, it's worm pee.
It's not. They call it leach it.
Leach
And
it.
so leach it.
Leach it.
Yeah. And so worm tea is a whole other thing, which I've never made. The leach it, they say, isn't really great for like fertilizer,
Really?
which is weird because I always
Yeah, I
use
thought
it.
it was, but.
So I don't know how much I buy that, but so to make worm tea, you actually take the castings and you mix them with water and you aerate it and you add like maple syrup or molasses to that activates the microbes,
Oh,
Oh,
and
interesting.
that's how you make the worm tea. So,
Huh.
but I've never done it, and I don't know.
So what do you do then with that liquid? Just toss it? Does it?
I actually dilute it and water my plants with it.
Right.
But another new thing that I learned is that you really don't want that much liquid. You
Right.
don't want your.
You don't
Do you
want
see
it.
how
Yeah.
this is a nice consistency?
Yeah,
It's not
muddy.
mushy. It's not too filled with moisture. And if you keep your worm farm in this sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, but state of,
Yeah.
balance or whatever.
Right.
I don't get any moisture.
Right.
I don't get any of that down there. What I get is a little bit of the compost and some worms.
Wow.
And then I just collect it out of there and I put the worms up with the
So the only real dampness is from the paper, like
And them themselves and the food,
Yeah, and
you know, you put
themselves,
food in,
right.
you're putting food in and
so you don't spray them, because I thought there's
you
some
can,
that
if
they
it,
like
if
water.
it feels dry, you can spritz them. I've never had to do it. It just, and they need oxygen, so they get the oxygen by these holes in the bins and by the top is only just on there lightly. It's got a, you know, it's not a seal.
Yeah.
It's not a seal. It's just, so air oxygen is getting in there. And that's basically it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Sorry, grit. So they, because of they have like a chicken, they use a gizzard. They don't have teeth, so they need grit. And so when I feed them, I also give them pulverized eggshells.
Oh, right.
So I take the eggshells and I run it through like a coffee
Grinder
grinder.
or something.
And I used to just put the eggshells in it, and they would work through the eggshells, and then they would end up being just like kind of big chunks. But then I learned about doing this, and I've been doing that.
Yeah.
So
About how long would you say you spend every month taking care of your worm farm?
on average,
Yep.
in a month, you could be as little as a half an hour.
It's just really just like putting it in the compost.
Yeah. If
Just paying
you're
attention.
more like I am, I check on them every day.
It's a loaded question.
I do. I check on them every day. I make sure, you know, everything's good. And if there's any kind of weirdness, I research it to find out why. Like I had some
You
weird.
separate the ones that are free.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if I get, like a lot of times it's a meditative process to harvest. And I use it almost as like if I have something bad happen in my life or something, go to the worms. And I spend a day with the worms. So that's the other thing is how do you harvest? How do you harvest your compost? So there's different methods. Some people do it by just plucking out the worms. Some people do it by they call it the light method. So you take your worm compost, get a tarp, dump it out onto the tarp, keep it up. The worms go away from the light, so you're either out in the sunlight or you've got a light shining on them, and they burrow away from the light. And then you scrape off the top bit, put it aside or into or whatever. Wait for them to go down again, then you get further down, and then just put your worms back in the bin. The other way you can do it is don't feed them for a while, right? And then introduce something very tasty, like a very overripe squash or something, and put it on one side, and they'll go to it. And the rest will be compost with some worms, because not every worm gets there. And like I said, you saw it in every layer there are worms. So I pick out every worm I can find, because I don't want any to perish.
Yeah.
So
We're lucky to have you.
okay.
Can you add more layers? Like
Yeah, I'm ready to add a layer here. So, but I'm gonna, because I want this nursery tray, I'm gonna add my layer under the nursery tray. But I need to add more paper to this.
so theoretically, you could just keep adding however many you wanted.
Yeah, this is my limit. I have 5 layers. And really that's enough, because I'm gonna wanna harvest, and once you harvest it, you just clean out your bin and you've got another one just to keep going. So it's kind of cyclical.
The stuff the compost that you get out of it, like compared to like just regular composting, like mixing it with your dirt, what ratio do you use when or do you just?
That I
set
don't
it
know,
on
I'm not
top?
scientific about it.
Right, but do you just like set it on top, or do you mix it in?
Well, this I would just, like, you would use it with your potting soil, or,
Just mix it in like.
mix it in.
a cup.
There is information on percentages and things like that to get your better growing circumstances, but I can't get.
I mean, that's so clean looking compared to regular composting, because you don't have the big chunks and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So my second question was, are these your original worms or have you had to add to them?
This is it. This is my original worms. And I've given away to at least 3 other people, 3 or 4. And that's the other thing is it's not for everybody. Some people haven't been able to proceed. Some people still, like Pat, my sister, she's been doing it for a number of years. Another friend of mine, she just got a second bin because she runs a daycare. And so she only feeds them. And she doesn't care about fruit flies, so that's Diana. So she got a second bin. So yeah. But
Well, she's also a beautiful garden. She's getting a exact house. And
yeah. So, but I've never had to buy more worms.
Well,
And one time when I was harvesting, no lie, I found a 2-headed worm.
Did you call her, please?
No, but I posted about it on social media, but I didn't show the picture because I thought people would freak out.
oh. They would have thought it was Photoshop.
So how many worms have you given away, do you think? How many pounds?
Probably a couple of pounds over
Okay.
time. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can go in there and just scoop up a whole big thing of them. So that's that. And see what else I missed. Oh yeah, also on here I put some links to where you can buy worms. How to make your own worm bin. And then at the end, the link to Rhonda Sherman, who's just a really cool worm lady. That's it. Yeah, they're cool. They live right in my kitchen. No problem. No one even knows they're there. When I have visitors, it's like you don't even see it. Yeah. You don't smell it. You don't see it.
Oh, great. It was wonderful. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Just take a bow.
Yeah.
Just give us 3.
Yeah.
So you probably heard about the new jumping worm that everybody's talking about.
Yes, and I am jumping out. It's a new one, not new, but it's an invasive worm, and they're called jumping worms. And they say if you find them, kill them.
Yeah,
which
what
I
do they
hate.
do?
I hate to do.
Are they?
They're also
really
top
bad.
feeders.
They're top feeders.
Yeah.
And they make the ground inhospitable for other feeders, and they can ruin the forest.
They can literally ruin the forest.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do they jump though? I mean, like
They do
They're-
jump.
They're like
They're really
really
violent.
active. If you find them, they're like, you can look online. They're just like, they're kind of creepy.
In a frenzy.
Yeah,
They're bigger than those two.
they're big. They're big like an
Yeah.
earthworm. Kind
Yeah.
of.
And they're, what's the band again?
Flotilla.
The glotellin is whiter, and it's usually stays down at one end, I think.
Have you found any in your garden?
No, but Beverly Ford, do you know Beverly?
Yeah.
She has found them, and she, a few months back, started really getting nervous about them. So she's been doing a lot of research. She's actually attended a jumping worm symposium down in Massachusetts.
Wow.
To really, educate herself.
Yeah.
And they're bad, and that the Master Gardener, York County Master Gardeners, for their plant sale this year, they required that everybody that dug up plants out of their garden had to do bare roots.
Oh wow.
Wow.
So you
Because
weren't
the little
transferred.
eggs
Oh yeah.
are all intermingled in the soil, and once you get them in your garden, you're not going to get rid of them. And they also recommend that you remove your boots, wash your shoes. I mean, it's pretty serious.
Oh. So
It's always
where-
something, man.
Like 36 states now has them.
So where made where did it have to go?
I think they've had them, just even locally, York County.
Well, the first time I got an inkling of it, it was last summer when we were at the botanical garden in Booth Bay.
Yes.
Some of the gardeners up there, were picking out the worms, and I could overhear them. They were saying something about how bad they were, and I was like, that really hit me the wrong way. You know? I didn't know what they meant. That must have been what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then there's another worm too. Is it the hammerhead worm?
I've seen that. Yeah, that's creepy.
They're creepy.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about them, but
No. Yeah, so I joined these worm groups, you know, so people have these kind of questions and they bring these things up and someone has showed a picture of this hammerhead.
yeah.
Oh.
And we'll all have nightmares.
Oh.
today.
Maybe I should look at the video. They're not like our nice friendly ones.
Yeah.
Really red wigglers.
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever seen them or not. I found a couple of worms this week and I couldn't tell if they were them or not.
I think if I be able to tell.
They're
Yeah, they're thrashing all the time.
really tough.
And they're usually at the top. They're not gonna be.
Huh.
So they eat all the food from the top and the poor little earthworms down below get shortchanged.
Yeah, so like earthworms, like our earthworms, they're not compost. They eat like dirt. They're not gonna make compost.
They'll eat the compost, but they won't.
Well, no, if they eat it, they'll make it. They earthworms, they burrow in the ground. They eat dirt
What
and
is,
dirt.
what do they eat then? They might.
Just the dirt, probably they get the nutrients from the microbes
soil, yeah.
and things like that, yeah. I learned that from.
Huh.
Yeah. You gonna say something?
So this other little fact, I don't know if you know that earthworms are native to North America.
Right.
They were introduced to Europeans.
Really?
That's interesting.
Yeah. Just a little fact.
Because they're good for aerating.
They really are.
Just read it.
Well, I knew it already, but I checked.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say something stupid.
Go for it. The bottom line is I love my birds.
Yeah. I know you talk about them so fondly. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laura, I used to give my earthworms a ride on my swing when I was a kid.
Well, there you go. See, you and I.
We're kindred spirits.
Yeah. Will you babysit my worms when I go to Paris?
I think the great thing is, yeah, you can go for weeks on end. Can't you, Laura?
I mean, like I said, if there was a worm in here, we just keep kind of working this soil.
Yeah.
And getting nutrients because there's always microbes in there, you know? And so, and like, for instance, I'll harvest my compost and I'll leave it in the basement all winter. And then I'll go to add it to something in the spring. I'll find worms alive. And they've been in there all winter without food, you know? So it's pretty amazing.
They've probably been eating the cat.
Well, natural. It's so cool.
Now I love worms too.
They're really useful.
So there's
I'm
extras.
going to hand that back to you.
Okay. Maybe I'll do another workshop.
Yeah,
sometime.
exactly.
If you have extras, I'll take whatever friend who can
Oh.
make it.
Take two.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This
thanks.
is so interesting.
Oh,
Thank you.
yay. Thank you.
The next talk is about keeping the funny in the
Yeah.